Hi, so this is our Passion Time project, and our topic was which bracket criteria is the closest to the real
March Madness.
Tournament. And this is by Tucker and Ryan.
Hello.
Hi. What we did is basically
what we did is we took lots of brackets.
38.
38, and what we did was we made we took every bracket and how you predict who's gonna win your the bracket before the tournament. Well, we could do it during the tournament, so we did it based off of for example, the first one that we did was fewest fouls. It was the worst one.
The Final Four, and this was all teams that got out in the first round, which was Northeastern, Wyoming, North Dakota State, and Harvard.
The final was Wyoming versus Harvard.
And our champion was Harvard, and Wyoming was the runner-up.
So that bracket did not do very well.
It was the worst.
It was the worst bracket. And then 27 was steals per games. The Final Four was West Virginia, VCU, Louisville, and Robert Morris.
Two of those
West
teams
Virginia
won the first round.
Made it to the Sweet 16, but lost to Kentucky, big time. VCU, they were out in the first round by
Ohio State. Louisville went to the Sweet 16.
No, the Elite Eight, because they played.
Elite Eight, sorry, and lost to Michigan State, and Robert Morris lost to Duke in the first round.
Yeah. And then the final is West Virginia versus Robert Morris.
West Virginia was crowned the champion, and Robert Morris was our runner-up.
26 is turnover margin, and Final Four was West Virginia, Villanova, VCU, and SF Austin. Two of those teams were out in the first round. West Virginia made it to the Sweet 16, like we said in the other bracket, and then Villanova was out in the Sweet 16, like them. And then the final was West Virginia versus Villanova.
And West Virginia was crowned champion again, and Villanova was the runner-up.
I think in lots of these have West Virginia winning, so if it might...
That's probably why they were bad.
but if the brackets, if West Virginia ended up actually winning the whole thing, the bracket points would be a lot more higher because, free throw percentage was the 25th best. The Final Four were Maryland, Ole Miss, Lafayette, and Iowa. Almost all of them got out in the first round
except for Iowa and Maryland. So
half got out in the first round. Maryland made it to the round of 32, same with Iowa.
Yeah, Ole Miss and Lafayette was the final in this. Ole Miss was the champion. And Lafayette was the runner-up.
Yeah. So
blocks per game is the next one. Our Final Four was Texas, St. John's, Ohio State, and LSU. Ohio State was the only one who had made it to the
second round.
LSU lost on a buzzer beater.
And then the final was Texas, St. John's. Texas won, and the runner-up was St. John's. So.
3-point field goals made was our number 23 bracket. The Final Four is Indiana, VCU, Belmont, and Eastern Washington.
All three of those teams got out in the first round, or all four of those teams got out in the first round.
Our final was Indiana versus Eastern Washington.
And the champion was Eastern Washington.
And our runner-up was Indiana.
It was kind of unfair because Indiana, they kind of had home court advantage because they...
if they made it to the final.
Yeah, if they made it to the final because it was in, obviously, Indianapolis in 2015, so... And then total offensive rebounds. West Virginia, Baylor, Louisville, and UCLA were the Final Four. Most of those, West Virginia made it to the Sweet 16. Baylor and Louisville
made it to the Elite Eight. UCLA made it to the Sweet 16, and Baylor was upset in the first round by Georgia State
on a buzzer beater.
Yeah.
The final would be West Virginia and Louisville. Like in other brackets in the past,
West Virginia is our champion.
Yeah.
Louisville is our runner-up.
21 is rebounds per game. The Final Four was Texas, North Carolina, LSU, and Iowa. All those teams except North Carolina got out in the first round or the second round. So the final was North Carolina versus LSU. The champion was North Carolina, and the runner-up was LSU.
Final points is number 20, sits at number 20. Our Final Four is Notre Dame, BYU, Belmont, and UCLA. Our final was BYU versus UCLA. Oh, and Notre Dame made it to the Elite Eight. UCLA made it to the Sweet 16, and BYU and Belmont were both out in the first round.
BYU, they didn't even
they lost in the first 4 round.
So they didn't really even make.
BYU would have won this all, but they didn't even make the actual tournament. So we didn't put them on our slideshow at the end.
It was a kind of bust. So the defensive rebounds per game. The Final Four was Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, and Gonzaga. Texas was out in the first round. North Carolina was out in the Sweet 16. Georgia was out in the first round, and Gonzaga was out in the Elite Eight. And then the final was Texas-Gonzaga. Gonzaga won.
And Texas was our runner-up. 18 is rebound margin. Our Final Four was Texas, Virginia, Gonzaga, and Arizona. Sorry about that background. All these teams except for Texas won their first round game. Gonzaga and Arizona both made it to the Elite Eight, while Virginia lost to Michigan State in the
second round
32. And our final was Arizona versus Virginia. Both teams advanced. And our champion was Arizona, and our runner-up was Virginia.
The 17th best bracket that we did was points per game. The Final Four was Notre Dame, BYU, Villanova, and Eastern Washington. Like we said before, BYU didn't even make the
tournament, and they ended up winning this. And Eastern Washington is a runner-up. So those two were in the final.
Yeah, some of these brackets were kind of a big bust. The Final Four for assists per game was Purdue, BYU, Michigan State, and SF Austin. The final was BYU and SF Austin.
Champion ended up being SF Austin, and runner-up being BYU.
So
we probably shouldn't have made them be in the tournament.
Yeah. The Final Four, Kentucky, Ohio State, Louisville, and St. John's. This was total blocks. Kentucky made it to the Final Four undefeated, and then they ended up losing to Wisconsin. So,
but they ended up winning this one.
Ohio State made it to the
second
round of 32. LSU was out in the first round. Same with St. John's. The final was Kentucky, St. John's, and then Kentucky won it over St. John's.
Okay, our 14th is field goal defense, which our Final Four in this was Kentucky, Virginia, SMU, and Georgia. And our final in this was Kentucky and Virginia. Our champion ended up being Kentucky in this, and our runner-up was Virginia in this.
13 was personal fouls per game. Final Four was Northeastern, Wisconsin, Wyoming, and San Diego State. Northeastern kind of got out in the first round by Notre Dame, but they put up a really good game against them. Wisconsin made it to the final, but eventually lost to Duke. And then Wyoming was out in the first round, and then San Diego State ended up losing in the second round to Duke. which they went on to win it. And then the final was Wisconsin, Wyoming. The champion was Wisconsin, and the runner-up was Wyoming.
Total steals was our number 12 bracket. And our final four was West Virginia, VCU, Louisville, and Robert Morris. Every team made VCU and Robert Morris did not make it to the second round even. And Louisville made it to the Elite Eight, and West Virginia made it to the Sweet 16. West Virginia and Robert Morris were in the final, and West Virginia ended up winning this again, and Robert Morris was a runner-up. I think, let me go back to like the 28th bracket. I think that it was a repeat. No, our 27th bracket, steals per game, was the exact same Final Four.
That's just odd.
Exact same Final Four, exact same final. So, yeah, West Virginia ended up winning it. Robert Morris was the runner-up.
That is very ironic.
Yeah.
That it's the same
they ended up
Final
getting the same. How many stars?
11 was fewest fouls. The Final Four was Wisconsin, Wichita State, Virginia, and Davidson. Wichita State, they beat Kansas, which was a very big shocker, and they eventually lost to Notre Dame in the Sweet 16. Wisconsin made it to the final. Virginia made it to the second round, and Davidson was out in the first round. The final was Wisconsin-Davidson. Wisconsin won. Davidson was the runner-up. The only reason that bracket was as high as it was is because of Wisconsin.
And he had Wichita State in the Sweet 16. Their field goal percentage is our 10th bracket. Notre Dame, Arizona, Lafayette, and Gonzaga are in the Final Four. Three or four of those teams won in the first round. All three of those teams ended up going to the Elite Eight and losing to the 1 seeds. And Notre Dame Gonzaga was the final. Gonzaga came out as the champion. Notre Dame was our runner-up.
9 was field goals made. The Final Four was Notre Dame, North Carolina, Gonzaga, and Michigan State. The final was Gonzaga, North Carolina. The champion was North Carolina, and the runner-up was Gonzaga.
Our 9th best bracket was was turnovers per game. The Final Four is Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Virginia, and Davidson. All of these teams won the first round game except for Davidson. Wisconsin and Virginia ended up getting to the final in this, and the champion was Wisconsin, and our runner-up was Virginia. And how these teams panned out in the real tournament, Notre Dame made it to the Elite Eight. Wisconsin lost in the final to Duke. Virginia lost to Michigan State in the second round, and Davidson got killed by Iowa in the first round.
7 is total assists. The Final Four is Notre Dame, North Carolina, Gonzaga, and Michigan State. I think that was the 9 bracket. Notre Dame, North Carolina, Gonzaga, and Michigan State. That is very weird. For the second time, a different Final Four was the same for 2. It was North Carolina, Michigan State. North Carolina won over Michigan State. And the 9 was Gonzaga, North Carolina. So it would be very strange if
that was the same
the
too.
9 and the 7, and it was like the 2 opposite teams. So
our 6th is the scoring defense, which is the team who gave up the least amount of points per game. The Final Four is Kentucky, Wisconsin, Virginia, and San Diego State. All these teams won their first round game. San Diego State and Virginia would both be eliminated in the next round by Michigan State and Duke. Kentucky and Wisconsin both went to the Final Four to play each other, where Wisconsin won. And our final was Kentucky versus Virginia, and Virginia won, with Kentucky being the runner-up.
Our 5 was scoring margin, and it was Kentucky, Arizona, Villanova, and Gonzaga. The final was Kentucky, Gonzaga. Champion was Kentucky, and the runner-up was Gonzaga.
Our 4th was winning percentage, so the team with the best record. Our Final Four was Kentucky, Wisconsin, Villanova, and Gonzaga. Villanova got out in the round of 32. Kentucky and Wisconsin both made it to the Final Four, and Gonzaga made it to the Elite Eight. Our final in this bracket was Kentucky versus Villanova. Kentucky came out to be the champion, and our runner-up was Villanova.
3 was assist-turnover ratio. Our Final Four was Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Villanova, and Davidson. The final was Wisconsin versus Davidson. The champion was Davidson over Wisconsin.
2 was total rebounds. Kentucky, North Carolina, Michigan State, and Gonzaga was our Final Four. Kentucky made it to the Final Four. Michigan State made it to the Final Four. North Carolina made it to the Sweet 16. And Gonzaga made it to the Elite Eight. Our final was North Carolina versus Michigan State, and our champion was North Carolina over Michigan State, who was our runner-up.
The number 1 bracket was free throws made. Which when someone was doing it, Ryan did the bracket. So the Elite Eight was Kentucky versus Kansas, Wisconsin versus Georgia. It was Duke versus Wisconsin and Duke versus Gonzaga. The Final Four is Kentucky, Arizona, Villanova, Duke, and then
our final ended up being Arizona versus Duke. Arizona came to be the champion in this bracket, and Duke was our runner-up.
Yeah, the reason probably why the bracket was so successful was because of Duke. So
yeah, and so here's all of our teams. We got Kentucky, Hampton, Cincinnati, Purdue, West Virginia, Buffalo, Maryland, Valparaiso, Butler, Texas, Notre Dame, Northeastern, Wichita State, Indiana, Kansas, New Mexico State,
Wisconsin, Coastal Carolina, Oregon, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, Wofford, North Carolina, Harvard, Xavier, Ole Miss, Baylor, Georgia State, VCU, Ohio State, Arizona, Texas Southern,
Villanova, Lafayette, NC State, LSU, Northern Iowa, Wyoming, Louisville, University of California, Irvine, Providence, Dayton, Oklahoma, Albany, Michigan State, Georgia, Virginia, and Belmont.
Duke, Robert Morris, San Diego State, St. John's, Utah, SF Austin, Georgetown, Eastern Washington, SMU, UCLA, Iowa State, UAB, Iowa, Davidson, Gonzaga, and North Dakota State. So, thanks for watching. Bye.
Yeah, that was our video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.